And now, Backstage Wife, the story of Mary Noble and what it means to be the wife of a famous star. Larry Noble's chief interest in Claudia Vincent is to help her get a start in the theater, and in this way to justify his impulsive invitation to her to stay at his home in Rosehaven, Long Island. But Mary is convinced that Larry's interest is far more personal, perhaps romantic. Right now, sometime after the evening performance of the play in which Larry is starring on Broadway, we find Larry in a well-known New York nightclub at a table with Claudia and Sheila, his leading lady. And we hear...
I hope you don't mind if I ask you a few questions, Miss Vincent. You see, this plan of Larry's comes as something of a surprise to me.
Why, I'll be only too glad to answer any questions, Miss...
Can't we dispense with the formalities? It's much easier to get down to cases if we use first names.
Yes, I suppose it is. You would certainly know, wouldn't you, Larry?
Huh?
Very well. If you don't mind, I shall call you Claudia, and you must call me Sheila.
I'll be delighted, Sheila.
Now then, you'd like to step into my part in the play.
Oh, of course. Who wouldn't?
Exactly. I doubt if there's an actress in New York who wouldn't jump at the chance to step into my shoes if word got around that I was leaving the play.
The point is, Sheila, that you can't afford to have word of that get around.
Well, I don't see how you propose to keep it a secret if Miss Claudia is trying to get the part.
We haven't spoken to a single soul about it yet. I haven't even told my wife about the plan.
I'll bet you haven't, darling.
What do you mean?
Nothing at all. Please go on.
Well, naturally, we both know that the utmost secrecy must be maintained if we're to put this over. If word should get out, our producer, Harold Ramsey's office, would be jammed with eager aspirants who want to crack at your part in the play.
And would he be wild?
Of course he would. And he'd never let you out of your run-of-the-play contract. He doesn't have to, you know, Sheila.
Certainly I know. And I wouldn't break my contract. Not even for the man I love more than anyone in the world.
All right, then. If you meant what you said to me when you first told me of this young man you want to marry, then it seems only reasonable that you do everything possible to help Claudia learn the part and make a favorable impression on Harold Ramsey.
You know very well that I'm dying to be released from my contract. And if Harold Ramsey would let me out, I'd be married and I'd be sailing for Europe within a month. The happiest woman alive. But I just don't see how it's possible.
Why not?
Well, I don't like to sound superior, but somehow I can't quite see an actress with no Broadway experience whatever stepping into my part. I hope that doesn't seem smug, but, well, after all, it's not the simplest role in the world. It does have rather subtle overtones.
I don't think you need to worry about that, Sheila. If you really want to get out of the contract, I have an idea it can be arranged to everyone's satisfaction.
I wonder. Do you mind telling me, Claudia, what experience you've had in the theater? Forgive me, but I don't remember seeing you in any recent play.
Well, of course you haven't seen me. My experience is very meager, Sheila. It's limited to several amateur theater engagements.
I see. And yet you haven't the least doubt that you could step into the lead part. Your confidence is rather startling when I consider how I nearly died of fright when I first started looking for work on the stage.
Well, I wouldn't have considered such a possibility if Larry hadn't said he thought I could manage it.
Really? That's very interesting. Isn't this rather out of your line, Larry? I mean, sponsoring an unknown actress in such an important role?
It was my impression from a rather emotional conversation with you, Sheila, that you'd give anything for the chance to marry this young man of yours.
Oh, you're so right, darling. And do you mean to imply that you've gone to all this trouble just to help me get out of my contract?
Well, that's certainly part of it. I'd like to help you if I could.
And Claudia?
I'd like to help her, too. It seems to me that this is a perfect opportunity to give everyone a break.
Well, if Sheila doesn't think I could play the part, I wouldn't dream of attempting it, Larry. I know that no one could ever do it as well as she does.
Thank you, dear. But I'm sure Larry doesn't agree.
Look, Sheila, I've heard Claudia read the part. I know she's good. And it's my opinion that she's a natural for this occasion. But don't get it into your head that I'm trying to influence you to leave the play, Sheila. That's the last thing I'd want to do. We're making money with the present cast. We're doing a sellout business. And that's fine for me. It's very fine, if you must know. And I would never have dreamed of making any change if you hadn't come to me almost in tears because you thought you'd have to break off this great romance of yours.
I understand, Larry. This whole plan came to you in a burst of generosity, and I am touched. In fact, I'm overwhelmed. But I doubt if Harold Ramsey will quite feel as open-minded about putting an unknown actress into my role.
Suppose you leave that to me. If I can persuade Harold to give Claudia a chance to read for him, have you any objection?
No, of course not. Only I just don't believe he'd listen to you.
I intend to coach Claudia in the part. I'm going to work over it like mad for the next few days. And she's been studying your technique, Sheila. If you really want a chance to be released, you might try to help a little yourself.
I haven't said I wouldn't help, have I? Good heavens, Larry, I'm not trying to spoil your plan. It's easy to see how much this means to you. If that's the way you want it, I won't stand in your way.
You've got this completely twisted about. It's your idea to leave the play. I'm only suggesting Claudia because I think she'd be perfect for the part.
Well, not ever as perfect as you are, Sheila.
Thanks. But before I make up my mind, would you give me a chance to hear you read a scene or two?
Oh, of course. Well, I'd be thrilled if you'd listen to me.
Good. Then suppose we leave it at that. Oh, I'm frightfully late now, and I simply must leave. It's been so nice meeting you, Claudia. How fortunate you are to have such a devoted sponsor as Larry Noble.
Sheila walks away from the table with all eyes on her as she goes. For quite a number of people have been observing this particular group. Meanwhile, in the Noble's home in Rosehaven, Long Island, Mary is opening the door of her friend Maud Marlowe's bedroom. And she whispers,
Maud? Oh, Maud.
Oh, what is it, dear?
I don't like to wake you, but I just felt that I had to talk to someone.
Oh, well, come in, Mary. No, wait. Let me turn on this bedside light so you can see. Oh, my. Well, what is it, dear? Is something wrong?
They haven't come home yet.
Who?
Larry and Claudia. It's after 3 o'clock and they aren't home yet.
Oh, well, sit down, dear. There, on the foot of the bed. Oh, that's better. Oh, you mean to say you've been awake all this time?
Yes. I just couldn't sleep.
Oh, well, has Rupert Barlow left?
Oh, of course, Maud. He left hours ago.
Oh, well, I guess I must have been asleep at the time. I didn't hear his car leave.
Well, he only stayed a short time.
Oh, how did your conversation with him turn out?
He was perfectly wonderful.
Oh.
I was almost ashamed to ask him to return the papers that Larry had given him as security for that mysterious investment he got mixed up in.
Oh, well, but you did ask him, I take it.
Yes. And he said, of course, he'd return everything.
When?
Right away. Tomorrow, if I want him to. Oh, he was sweet about it. He said he'd gladly take over the loss that this meant.
Well, if it was supposed to be such a fine investment for Larry, why should there be any loss?
I don't know the details, Maud. I only know that Larry shouldn't have turned over everything we owned to gamble on some financial deal. It was foolhardy and...
Now, you remember why he did it, don't you?
Yes, of course I remember. But just the same...
He wanted to give you a chance to take Larry Jr. and go away until the gossip about you and Rupert Barlow died down, particularly around here.
I know that, but there never was any reason for that gossip.
I'm sure there wasn't, Mary. At least not on your side. But just the same, I wonder whether you ought to get involved in any kind of business deal with Rupert without telling Larry about it.
I have no intention of telling Larry anything at all. Not when he's behaving like this. When he's making a fool of himself over Claudia Vincent, staying out till all hours, inviting her to drive back and forth to New York with him. What do you expect me to do? Just sit back and smile my blessing?
Well, now, Mary...
No, indeed. I'm blazing mad. To think that Claudia would dare to stay here in my home and make a shameless play for my husband. Well, if Larry wants to be a fool, let him. I'm going to see to it that my son and I are protected. I'm going to get those securities back. And I'm going to see that they're kept in the bank from now on.
Maud Marlowe sees that it's useless to argue with Mary in her present mood, so she just waits till her temper simmers down a bit. But at the same time, she's inclined to agree with Mary's point of view. Be sure to be listening tomorrow to Backstage Wife, the story of Mary Noble and her husband Larry Noble, famous Broadway star.